Hello.
Dorcas, do you want to pull up the opening slide while people are introducing themselves?
Dorcas, are you still letting people in? Should we give it a sec? Okay.
Yeah.
It's so nice to see so many people here. This is great. For people who are just joining us, if you can put your name and your affiliation in the chat, just as a way of introducing yourself to the group, please do, and we'll get started. We're just gonna maybe leave 30 more seconds for folks to trickle in. Great. All right, well, it's 12:06 and we know we have a pretty packed agenda in this training. So I'm Jennifer Lucky with the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination. And I'm gonna actually turn it over to our director, Carrie Abbott, to get started. And if we'll have time for questions and some discussion, although we do have quite a big group here, but if you have questions during the training, we'll be monitoring the chat. So please feel free to type in, and I'll turn it over to Carrie to get started. And Carrie, Dorcas is going to advance the slides.
Great. Thanks so much, Jen, for greeting everyone. And hi, everyone. It is, as Jen said, really, really great to see so many folks here, both our strategic planning committee members and also looks like a lot of OHCC staff and healthcare services agency staff looking to be ambassadors for the Home Together plan. So kind of an exciting moment for really getting this out in the community and making sure that everyone is, comfortable being an ambassador for the plan. So Dorcas, can we move forward? Great, so here's today's agenda. I have gone through introductions, and I'm definitely tracking through in the chat, and then we'll go into the background of the Home Together plan a little bit. Jen is going to walk us through that. We'll look at Home Together data, goals and strategies, the city-county collaboration, and our timeline and next steps. Next one. So I just wanted to talk about why we're calling this an ambassador training. We have been meeting as a strategic planning committee to get input on the plan and to incorporate that input into the printed document, and really to make sure that the work in the Home Together plan is true to the work we did in the centering race equity process and the system modeling process, and to make sure to really incorporate people with lived expertise or lived experience of homelessness into the planning process at every level. And of course, that also is true for the ambassador training work. We want to make sure that a lot of different people involved in the homelessness response system can get out there and help share the plan. Right now, we get a lot of requests from the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination and Everyone Home to present the plan to everyone from, city council groups to neighborhood groups. Some business associations are interested in hearing more about the plan. Second grade classrooms would like to hear more about the plan. And so really there's just such an opportunity to talk to all different kinds of stakeholders. So I think it'll be great to have lots of people comfortable doing that. So we will share our summary presentation to make sure that folks are familiar with that and see how it usually gets presented. And then happy to answer questions as we go about why we're saying things the way we're saying, or whether we should be including different information from the planning, and then to look at opportunities to partner in how we present this. Next one. And I will turn it over to Jen for the next section.
Okay, thanks. I know we have a lot of information. This is a pretty pithy 5-year strategic plan for our entire community around homelessness. So, we won't be able to get to every detail, and I don't want people to feel too overwhelmed. We'll just try to hit on the highlights, and we have information at the end, how can you contact us if you have other questions. But the first thing I just wanted to point to is where on our Office of Homeless Care and Coordination website, which is homelessness.ac.gov.org, where you can actually find the plan and the executive summary so that you can look through it at your own pace. You'll recognize when we go through the slides today that it's directly correlated to the plan. So that's where that is. You can point people to that website as well. Next slide, Dorcas. Thanks. And then just stepping back, for those of you who don't know, and this may be a review for many of you, but the Home Together 2026 Community Plan is a 5-year countywide plan that adopts goals for our community to reduce homelessness and achieve greater equity. So as Carrie mentioned, prior to putting this plan together, many of you were involved in the racial equity analysis and system modeling to analyze where is our system, where do we have extreme disparities, and then what does our system need in order to serve people experiencing homelessness. So that was conducted in 2019, 2020. And this particular plan takes it a step further to look at what are the strategies that we can implement and how can we move forward, and what are some of the specific goals to actually build a system that is working to meet all of the needs of people experiencing homelessness in Alameda County. So information in the plan covers lots of data about people experiencing homelessness, what's our existing inventory, and then we get down to the specific numbers of what is it going to cost and what would it take to build out an optimal system over the next 5 years. Next slide, Dorcas. So this little graphic here is showing in orange, this is our community plans. And we wanted to show here that the Home Together community plan aligns with state requirements and different state plans around homelessness. That's the California Comeback Plan. Also, we've worked together to align with the All Home Regional Action Plan. And then cities may create their own plans to align with Home Together. And the county, we are actually working on well into developing an action plan for county agencies and the COC that aligns with Home Together. So our hope is that all of these plans will align. So we're really working all together in step towards the goals of Home Together. Next slide. And then Carrie also mentioned a strategic planning committee. I'd like to give a shout out to members of the strategic planning committee. If anyone on the strategic planning committee could raise their hand so folks who are attending can see who you are. It was a dedicated group that met for over a year. Thank you, strategic planning committee members. You see listed here organizations that strategic planning committee members represented, who really helped to build out the Home Together 2026 community plan. And it included people with lived experience. We had cities, counties, nonprofit organizations, service providers, leadership members from the continuum of care as well. So we've got experts on this meeting as well. So thank you, everyone. Next slide, Dorcas. I'm going to now turn it over to Carrie to really dive into some of the more specific data.
Thanks, Jen. And again, I'm going to go through this pretty briefly because the people on this call have largely been very involved in developing the plan. But just to sort of look at what we present when we're doing community presentations. Next one. So of course, we start with the racial disparities that really launched our Centering Race Equity process with APT and all of our community partners in the end of 2019. We look at the disparities specifically around African-American households in Alameda County and American Indian or Alaska Native, because those are the most disproportionate in our system. Next one. We then look at unsheltered homelessness as part of what shapes the Home Together plan is the degree of unsheltered homelessness in Alameda County. We, of course, note that the 2019 point in time count is what was used to inform the plan and centering racial equity in our homeless system response. But we now have the 2022 numbers, so we have updated our materials to include what the numbers looked like in 2019 and in 2022. Next one. We look at special populations that are called out in the Home Together plan. The community plan really talks about specific approaches and resources needed for transition age youth, for older adults, for people with behavioral health needs, people impacted by intimate partner violence, and people impacted by the criminal justice system. Next one. We then talk about system modeling, what system modeling is. You know, it definitely plays a big part in the Home Together plan. And we talk about how in this community, we decided to model a homelessness response system where there are resources to rehouse anyone who's homeless in our community, rather than modeling, you know, what it would take to incrementally decrease the people who are experiencing homelessness. We really looked at what it would take to house everyone who's experiencing homelessness. So they're really big goals. Next one. We always highlight this one, that what'll happen if we don't do this plan. So if we don't implement the Home Together plan or come close to it, we see the red line where we will end up with 18,000 people experiencing homelessness in 2026. The purple line being if we just invest significantly in preventing new homelessness. And the orange line at the bottom there, if we can implement new prevention and increase our housing stock for people who are homeless. Next one. So this is the impact of increased investment on the homeless system. And so the red line is annual households in the system. So this is what we project if we implement the Home Together plan. The purple line in the middle is how many people with an unmet need remain in our system at the end of each year, getting to 0 by year 5, because in our green line, this models how many households are served in pathways to housing. And by 2026, the green line meets the red line because we're able to serve 100% of the households who are experiencing homelessness if we implement these resources. Next one. And then we talk about the cost of the plan, that the Home Together community plans modeling shows that we would need 2.5 times the funding that we currently have available to support our system in order to meet the needs of people experiencing homelessness. Next one. And then we go into our goals and strategies. Go ahead, Dorcas, thank you. and I like to point out in introducing the goals and strategies that in every one of these major sections of the Home Together plan that we discuss the need to center racial equity in each activity, that each big piece of work has to include that racial equity centering. And then that we use the needs analysis or system modeling data to inform each of the pathways into housing through each of these strategies. And we ensure to work toward a system that ends homelessness. Next one. Then we go into depth in the specific strategy. So goal number 1 is to prevent homelessness for our residents. And so here we talk about each of the major activities in that section. So in goal 1, we discuss addressing racial disparities in our mainstream and upstream systems to prevent the racially disproportionate inflow into homelessness. We discuss focusing resources for prevention on people most likely to lose their homes. And so we've looked at the data about who is most at risk. And we really emphasize using our prevention dollars and services and interventions to help those people. Then the third one is to rapidly resolve episodes of homelessness through housing problem solving. So making sure that we have the level of housing problem solving resources we need in our coordinated entry access points and out on the street, so that we can, when there's a more straightforward one-time need, we can deliver that right away so people can return to the last safe place they were or to another safe place. Then fourthly, preventing the racially disproportionate returns to homelessness. And so this is where we have assisted someone who was homeless in getting to a safe place to stay, into permanent housing, and then they come back because we didn't provide a resource that was sustainable enough for them. So really looking at keeping in touch with people as they move through the homelessness response system and ensuring that we have a backstop for people who aren't, for example, they're in rapid rehousing and they have a time-limited subsidy and they have challenges in being able to increase income enough to be able to afford a rent in this ridiculously priced rental market in our county. So making sure that we're not just leaving people out there without resources when we've already, worked with them to find a safe place to live. Next one. The second one is connecting people quickly to shelter and needed resources. And so here we looked at expanding access in neighborhoods where we know people are most likely to become homeless or are experiencing homelessness. We talked about lowering our programmatic barriers to crisis services like prevention, problem solving, and shelter. So, making sure that if someone needs shelter, that we are not a system that only has shelter beds that don't fit that person's needs, that, require a particular time check-in for people who are working and need to be able to be at their job during that time. Things like that make it harder for people to accept shelter. And then preventing discharge from mainstream systems. So this is where we're working with hospitals, with the criminal justice system, facilities, and really trying to make sure that there is a housing plan for everyone who is leaving a mainstream system. Then working to really significantly increase our availability of shelter. And this is what the graph on this slide represents, is how this plan impacts our unsheltered population. This is something that our strategic planning committee and many of our community stakeholders felt really strongly about. Like, even if we're gradually going to get to the amount of housing we need to provide more shelter in the meantime. And so over 5 years, you see the unsheltered unmet need going from over 5,000 down to 0. And then the caveat for that is that our data show us that we need to increase non-congregate models and models where people have their own space, the ability to have some storage, the ability to be, with their partner, to bring their pet if they have a pet, and to be able to have some privacy and dignity in shelter. That when we're able to provide that, along with housing resources connected to that, we see a much higher rate of exits into permanent housing from those models. And then the fifth activity here is making sure that we have behavioral health services available to people with serious mental illness or substance use needs, and who are unsheltered or in shelter or in supportive housing programs. So making sure that throughout our system, when we place someone, we're making sure that they have the right services going with them. Next one. So our third goal is the, of course, most obvious one is to increase housing solutions. And here we really go into detail in the numbers about what types of housing we need to increase, that we need new supportive housing, including special models for frail and older adults with higher medical needs, that we need dedicated affordable housing. And this is a big recommendation from the Centering Race Equity work, that we need subsidies for people who do not necessarily need intensive services in order to be housed. Number 3 is to create shallow subsidies so that people can exit or avoid homelessness with more limited assistance. Then we have adding new rapid rehousing. We make sure that new housing funding is distributed across the county according to need. And we reduce our entry barriers to housing and ensure racial equity in referrals and in placements. Next one. Then finally, these recommendations have been with us really since we first started planning for Home Together, that we need to strengthen our coordination and communication and capacity in our system. We need to work together better. We need to make sure that all of that is seamless to people who are experiencing homelessness. So we really need to set up our infrastructure in a way that makes it easy to access from outside. In this goal, we talk about coordinated entry, adding access points, our street response with behavioral health, our housing navigation so that we can get to the point of housing navigators for everyone who needs one, our landlord liaison programs to make sure that we're accessing the units in the private market or in affordable housing, and providing some ongoing support in those situations so that landlords know who to talk to, and we can try to maintain that stability for people who have been placed in the private market. Make sure that we have career ladders for people transitioning out of homelessness within our organizations, within our nonprofit provider organizations, within our government agencies, and throughout our system. And that we provide capacity building resources, really helping to shore up our community-based organizations in a really expensive environment with a lot of transition going on and a lot of challenges for community-based organizations. And then finally, the system coordination goal of making sure that we are convening partners, that we're working together, learning from our experience, reporting out to our community members. Next one. Okay, and I think I get to turn it back over to Jen and to the rest of you.
Yes, I know that this is only an hour-long training, but that was a lot of information. So we have a little bit more content, but I just wanted to pause here and see if people had specific questions that we could answer, to get a sense of what information you're coming away with, or what we can answer to make this information more digestible to you. And you could put your question in the chat, or you can unmute and just ask your question. Okay, Jonathan has a question.
Hi, everyone. Hey, Jen, thanks for facilitating. Thanks, Carrie. I think one of the things, as one of the people that spent probably more than less time with this on the wonkier side of the details, I think one thing that would be really helpful from a sort of an ambassador perspective is a way to sort of summarize or synthesize what some of these points might connect to relative to concrete initiatives like going on relative to this funding or this, so that people in that ambassadorial work could sort of maybe draw the lines for those they're speaking to of how this might relate to funding needs in this area or a specific initiative, et cetera, to really help tie the plan to some sort of concrete things that might be relevant to decisions that those they're ambassadoring to might help make decisions about. So I don't know if there's a way to just create kind of a reference for some of the, if there are places where some of these key points connect to certain like funding needs or initiatives or things that, you know, we want to get passed or approved from, you know, county or city coffers would be a really, I think, helpful way to really drive the ambassador piece in a concrete way that helps people be like, great, you know, so that it's not the plan floating over the earth, but like, and this relates to this decision for this council kind of thing. Just a thought.
I think that's a really good point, Jonathan. And it reminds me that, you know, whenever we do presentations, we do try to tailor it to the audience. And it's something that, hey, Mona's here. It's something that, you know, I think that we should talk about how that happens as we kind of roll out the ambassador program. You know, if like, for example, we had a presentation in Castro Valley, and so we tried to include some key data about the unincorporated area and how, you know, the specific housing goals for that area. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. And, you know, for transition age youth, absolutely. Like we have some super specific examples about the new Tay access point and, you know, the peer navigation work that our YAB and our YHCP partners are taking on right now.
And then maybe even, and just last comment, like maybe even more of a philanthropically oriented guide, right? To like, for those of like the, you know, like for those of us that might have opportunity to talk or engage with, you know, about this plan with those private dollars, like what is the framing for that crowd, right? Which, you know, given our billions of need, you know, hopefully would be a pretty significant partner. So just ways that the public-private part might really plug in and be something to ping and sharing, because I know, you know, just looking at who's on this call, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of folks have engagement with that side of the funding too.
Absolutely, good point. Natasha.
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback off of what Jonathan was saying as far as maybe creating or really putting something out that articulates what being an ambassador means, so that this work stays anchored, particularly as we are all going off and doing our independent work and you know, really diving deeply into independent initiatives. What is the contribution and the commitment to continuing to circle back to this plan and ensuring that it's being elevated in that work and those connections are being made? I think that's going to be really critical moving forward. And so maybe just some thought and consideration, or maybe even, you know, solicitation of some input of how folks believe that they can commit to that in those conversations to keep this at the forefront.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And we are going to get into, in a couple minutes, into a little bit more about what that sort of presenting plan would look like and how, you know, how we'll be able to partner on it. So we're gonna put down your comment into the notes for that section in advance. So I think, yeah, let's go ahead and zip through the next section so we can get to more about how we plan the ambassador rollout work. Thank you, Dorcas. Next one. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the community plan endorsement and working with the cities. So far, as you all know, the Board of Supervisors and the Continuum of Care Leadership Board, along with the Alameda County Conference of Mayors, have endorsed the Home Together plan. City councils on the left here have all endorsed the Home Together plan. And then I just updated this slide in our in our source deck, Jen, but the city of Albany also had scheduled their city council endorsement of the plan. So we've made a lot of progress in getting the cities to calendar this, and talking through with their homelessness representatives about how to present the plan and how we can work together on that. But if you see your city up there as scheduled or pending or not scheduled, then and want to think through how we can take that to them together, then we're always happy to do that as well. I think Jessica Lobodon is on, and she's been really helping coordinate the city adoption of the plan. Next one. Okay, now the discussion questions about how we're going to roll out this ambassadorship. So Jen, you want to facilitate these?
Yes, and I did want to say I wasn't sure what order to put the slides in, so I'm going to give a preview of kind of the next slide, but I wanted to not scare people, to let you know that if being an ambassador, you're not working in a vacuum. We are here in our office with everyone home, others from the strategic planning committee. If you have a group that you would like to make a presentation to or want to talk something through, we can. I will send out a sort of general set of slides based on this presentation. But like Carrie said, it's helpful to tailor slides. And I think that there's a lot of support, and I definitely can just offer from myself and our office that we're here to support tailoring those presentations or thinking through what is that specific information to put out there. And we do, I think this, want to work in partnership and want to know what everyone is doing. And one of the things that we're curious about from this group, either, knowing about Home Together, or if you're just hearing about the Home Together plan today, what are your thoughts about who you might like to set up a presentation with? Or maybe you've already had a request from someone, but if you want to either let us know by unmuting or to put that answer in the chat, just like to hear that. Do you think there are groups that may?
Kathy.
Oh, yeah, Kathy.
Okay, so are we going to choose, because I would like to be an ambassador, are we going to choose the audiences that we want to go talk to? Or are you going to are you going to give me audience to talk to?
I think it's going to work a little bit both ways, because I am hoping that people who are interested enough to come to this training may have ideas and think this would be a great group. I'd like to put something on the agenda. But like Carrie said, we're often receiving requests for presentations. And so we have a note of people who have attended here. And so we would also like to be able to come to you and ask, would you be interested in doing a presentation? So both and I see that Sabrina also has a question.
Yeah, following up on her question about who the presentations would be for. So just full disclosure, I got a full-time job, but I do have a few split shifts. So if I was asked to do a presentation, would there be some, possibility of me giving, okay, well, we could schedule it at this time in the afternoon? And how long are the presentations looking like? What Carrie just did was pretty cool. I mean, like my split shifts, I would have maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours to play with. Would the presentation be that? Would I be able to fit it in that time? And do you put the presentation for me to give, or would I be putting it together? How does that work?
Okay, so I think that the presentations, it's going to depend on the group you're presenting to. I mean, some groups may say, here's 20 minutes on our agenda, and another group might give an hour. And yes, there's always, partnership around presentations. And I think if we were to, let's say our office received a request and we said, oh, this would be great. Let's see if Sabrina can, lead the presentation or co-present, then of course we can work out the scheduling together. So I think it is going to be a bit of collaboration. People, you're not signing up to receive a whole workload on top of your existing busy schedule.
And I also have quite a few different specific types of agencies I work with, recovery agencies, different stuff like that in because I do a lot of different things with a lot of different areas in Alameda County that I would love to be part of presenting to, because I think that it would be helpful for it to be me. And I don't know if I would, I don't know if I would tell you guys that, or if you're going to put like, okay, these are presentations that we need done, who's interested in these, how the process would go to choose who does what.
Carrie, I saw you had a hand up. And then
Yes.
Kathy.
Yeah, no, and Sabrina, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, I think we want to keep a spreadsheet, a list of who's interested in being an ambassador, willing to be an ambassador, and kind of what their special interests are, or, special experience is. And, wherever we can, I think it's great if we can present in pairs and make sure that we have someone with lived experience as part of the presentation, and, really make sure that this is grounded in the same goals and, principles as the planning has been. So absolutely, like, particular types of interests that you have and experience that you have, I think we should track in our spreadsheet.
Thank you.
You had a question?
Yes, I do. Okay, I would like to present to East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation, which they build affordable housing. They do you think they will be a good candidate? Because I actually sit on on two of their committees. Would that be something that you think would be a good company to do the presentation to?
Yes, and that's definitely the kind of request we get. I don't think I've seen one from Evolve, but yes, I think that's a great example. Some of the sort of industry groups around supportive housing, but also some of the specific large nonprofit organizations and service providers. And that's why we need ambassadors, is because, we're so lucky that there's so much interest in this, and it's so important to get the message out there. So Kathy, yeah, I think Jen and Noemi, who's our sort of communications lead for OHCC, will help us keep track of these kinds of requests and keep track of who might be available for them.
Yeah, we could send out a survey following this meeting about who might want to be an ambassador, to get a sense of, like Sabrina, you were saying, are there groups of particular interest or types of groups, and a little bit more information so that we can keep track. And then it will also be great to report back of how many presentations have we made, are there sectors of our community that we haven't been presenting to that we really want to try to reach out to, because we do want to make sure that people know what this strategic plan is. And I think, just looking to the future, there will be follow-ups about how is it going. This is just, here's the plan as our first, our kind of baseline. And so we are creating a communication network that we can present back to when we have those kinds of findings. I see a question from Josh. Is someone who recently transitioned from a community-based organization to the Office of Homeless and Care and Coordination. The capacity building strengthening CBO's aspect of the plan was interesting. Okay, great. So yes, we could definitely follow up and continue to talk about that. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry to clarify, Jen, that was an answer to that question, not presenting a question, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought it was Q too. Thanks. Sabrina, do you have another question?
Yeah, it just real quick, it's all we need. Is there any reimbursement or incentive for doing this? Does anybody get paid? I'm gotta ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think we have some ability, if if someone's already participating in a group that has stipends for participation, like we can, I don't want to speak for everyone home, but like we could look at our emerging leaders program and whether we're able to include presenting home together as part of that. We also, you know, with our youth action board, potentially could include that as a stipended activity, but these would need to be brought to those groups. If we do have folks who aren't participating in, you know, in a stipended program, I think we would want to figure out how to do that. Like, you know, and I agree that if someone isn't doing this as part of their salaried or, you know, or hourly paid role, that we want to figure that out.
Any other questions or thoughts? Thanks for those of you who commented in the chat about where you might want to present or specific aspects of the plan that you want stakeholders to know about. I think that's really helpful, and we can definitely keep the conversation going. And for all the questions, I think that's really helpful for us knowing how to move forward with organizing all of this in the right way. Dorcas, could you move to the next slide? So I didn't put on here this survey, but I'd like to put together a survey that I send out to this group. The other thing is I just wanted to put together a little toolkit, like an ambassador toolkit that would have a very basic set of slides that could be tailored, and maybe some content for outreach emails that if people are interested in proactively pursuing a presentation, and then we'll follow up with how we might communicate about requests that we receive for support with presentations. And then of course, keep track of the presentations. And I put my email in the slides. I'll send out this set of slides just to the group as, you know, for our training, but please feel free to be in touch with questions about other materials that you'd like to have, or tailoring presentations, or even just this presentation.
The other thing we might want to do as we move forward is if you give a presentation, I find it really helpful to hear the feedback. Like, how did it go? Did they request any additional information? Were there any questions that that you weren't able to answer that we can then, you know, provide some additional information if that's needed? You know, were there any questions that came up that we need to come back and talk through as a group? Because it's definitely, you know, with each group we present to, we're gonna learn.
Absolutely.
Sabrina has it.
The Emerging Leaders Program, was that the one where you had like 3 cohorts of 6? Is that the one you guys just finished up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, Sabrina. I was looking to see if Katie Haverly's here, or Dorcas. I don't know if you're able to answer.
The reason I'm asking is I had a couple of people I referred, and I think they did the Emerging Leaders Program. I don't know, but I was wondering if they were presented this opportunity as well, or if they even know about it.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm not sure if the folks from Everyone Home are able to answer. I would guess not, because mostly initially that program has been set up to help support the continuum of care governance committees, but it does seem like a really important potential activity, and so that's why I'm sort of saying it as like, I think this could be an option and we need to talk it through. So.
Okay.
Thanks for that question. So Dorcas, could you go forward one slide? Yes, thanks. I wanted to just wrap up. This is information that I wanted this group to just have, and you could include it in a presentation if you wanted. Just a bit of a timeline of how the Home Together 2026 community plan has come together, and then the plans for moving forward. So the Home Together plan was released in May of 2022. The Strategic Planning Committee met for an entire year before then. We have dates on here for when the County Board of Supervisors and the COC and cities started to endorse the plan, which was just this summer. And we're working on finishing up a draft of this county action plan that's aligned with Home Together to look at the role of the county and the COC in activities, goals, and strategies and implementation actions that are listed in the Home Together plan. And right now we're preparing ambassadors and going into our phase of communicating about this plan. And then we're aiming for the late fall to have the first information, data collected, and an initial update about how we're doing. We will be able to report hopefully more than less on the progress in year one of the Home Together community plan, which we're already in 2022. So that's just a timeline to give context. We have about 10 minutes left in the meeting, and I just wanted to leave that time for other general questions, thoughts, and the feedback that is being generated here is really, really helpful for thinking about this ambassador plan. And I also want to say, if there are any questions just about content with Home Together, please, it would be helpful, I'm sure, for everybody to hear those questions if you have them.
Yeah, hi Jen, this is Kawal.
Hi, Kawal.
And everyone, I'm Kawal Yolanda with Office of Homeless Care and Coordination. And, I've seen this presentation about 3 times, and I could present it, but I have to say I wouldn't be able to do it with the confidence to respond to questions with in a deep, knowledgeable way as I can with other trainings that I comfortably do. And, I would like to be able to do that. And then the other thing that comes up for me is if when it's asked, like, do you really think in that timeline you guys are it's gonna go down to 0? Like, just a reality check question around that, and how we respond to that in a in a good way, just in just being real about the challenges and the difficulties of what we're doing. And anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a really good point, Kawal. And I think it would be great to maybe in this survey that we're working on, Jen, we can include a question about, like, would you prefer to co-present with someone who's done this before if you make a presentation, just to make sure that there's always a balance and that people are not, kind of outside of their comfort zone. And yes, Kawal, I get that question every time. And I've told the cities and our board and our neighborhood associations that if we don't more than double what we're doing, we will not get to 0. And that, right now, that is what we need to do, is really look at increasing the resources. But even with what we have, we can do better. We can, we can follow these ratios with the funding that we do have, and make sure that we're really supporting housing exits with every interim model and things like that. So really emphasizing what the system modeling and the race equity goals tell us about how we can improve our current system, even though we won't get to 0 without these new investments.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Pleasure. No, thanks for joining. Sabrina, did you have an additional question?
Probably not. I probably just forgot to put my hand down. Sorry about that.
No worries. And thanks, Kathy, for joining us.
Any other questions that folks want to spend time discussing in this last few minutes? as people are thinking of their questions, I'm just going to say, in terms of our next steps and our follow-up, everyone should receive a survey. I'll try to get that out this week. And also a follow-up to this meeting. We'll send the slides from this training, but then you should also, depending on your response to the survey, if you say you're interested in being an ambassador, then we can make sure that you're sent this toolkit, the set of slides, some email content language, and please let us know if there are other materials that you would like, and we'll be in touch. We could even maybe create an email group to send some updates to of ambassadors, just kind of periodically what's happening, who's doing presentations, et cetera. We'll try not to overwhelm you with emails, and really to be respectful of everyone's time, appreciating that for many people, this is outside of their typical duties of their role. But we appreciate that we are all working towards the same goals and are really looking forward to collaborating with you, and having this be a good process and the start of some good communications infrastructure that will continue on. Oh, hi, Liz has a question.
I'm wondering, so I'm imagining doing this presentation, and I'm wondering if there can be a slide with the homeless count numbers in there, because I think people have questions. And then I'm wondering if there could be a slide maybe at the end of like where we hope this funding will come from.
Okay, when you
I
say,
I don't know if we can mention Measure W right now, but I mean, like, to give people hope, or to give people like, so we need your advocacy, or we need your donations, or we need your whatever.
Right. Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. We did include the basic homeless count numbers. And then once the full report is out, we can include, obviously more extensive, charts and graphs from the 2022 count. But right now, slide 11 has just the totals. And then, I think it's a good point. And Jonathan said, something similar about philanthropy, right? Is like, they're going to want to know what to do. And I think that's really good feedback that we can try and include a slide that or two that kind of contemplates like how can partners invest, what are we, maybe we have a slide on what the pipeline looks like and where the gaps are. So
like cities, like smaller cities need to do more general fund, like there might be some suggestions.
yeah, depending on the presentation.
Mm-hmm,
That's
mm-hmm.
really good. Yeah, thanks for the suggestion. And if others have suggestions about tailoring presentation for a specific audience, or even something that you think would be, a good addition to the general presentation, we really would welcome that feedback. Thank you, Donald Fraser from BOSS. That's a great suggestion, presenting to collaborative networks. That's great.
Yes, and so appreciate the turnout today. Really, really glad to have this group of people interested in being ambassadors and, sharing the communication with us. It's awesome. And so we'll be reaching out with the sort of survey questions and what did you think and what would you need in order for this to be successful for you, and then keeping track of all that and keeping track of some of the requests for presentations and how we can get groups of 2 out there to present wherever we're able.